On my 18th birthday, my family handed me a box. It was small, wrapped in that same shiny silver paper Mom used every year, like she was trying to pretend we were normal. My heart fluttered. Maybe, just maybe, this year would be different. I looked up, smiling nervously. Mom stood across the table, arms folded tight, eyes unreadable. My sister Lena leaned back in her chair, twirling her hair like she was bored at a dentist appointment. My little brother Jake was already snickering, probably because Lena whispered something in his ear. Uncle Roy had that smug grin plastered on his face, the one he wore whenever someone was about to be humiliated, but wasn't him. Grandpa sat quietly in the corner, his hands folded neatly in his lap. He didn't look at me. He just stared at the cake in the center of the table, like he knew something I didn't. The box was light, too light. My hands trembled just a little as I pulled the ribbon loose. I tried to keep my face neutral, but inside, my heart was thudding so loudly it echoed in my ears. I lifted the lid, and that was it. No gift, no card, just a single folded note. At first, I thought it was a joke, some kind of scavenger hunt, a clue. My pulse jumped with a tiny flicker of hope until I opened it and saw 5 words scribbled in black ink. Try being useful for once. Silence. Then Lena burst out laughing. Even her gift is empty, she said, loud enough for everyone to hear, just like her life. Everyone laughed. Jake chuckled along with her. Uncle Roy slapped his knee like he'd just heard the best punchline of the year. Even Mom. She didn't laugh, but I saw her smirk, like she approved. I couldn't move. My stomach twisted so hard I felt sick. The note dangled from my fingers, crumpling slowly as my grip tightened. My cheeks were burning, and I couldn't tell if it was from rage or shame. Maybe both. I stared at them, each of them, and all I could think was, this is what I am to them. A joke, an inconvenience, an empty box. Lena's face was gleaming with satisfaction, her eyes locked on mine, daring me to cry. I wouldn't, not in front of her. My voice caught in my throat, but I swallowed it. I could feel my hands shaking now, and I quickly set the box down before they noticed. I didn't say a word. What was there to say? Instead, I stood up. My legs felt like they weren't even part of me, but somehow I walked, slow, steady, past the table, past the cake, past their smirks. My heart pounded louder with each step. I opened the drawer by the counter and pulled out the envelope, the one I had written the night before, just in case. I turned around, and for a second the room was completely silent. Even the laughter stopped. Grandpa looked up. I walked to the table. My footsteps echoed on the hardwood floor as if the house itself had gone still. I placed the letter right in front of my mom. No words, just a calm, deliberate motion. Her smirk vanished. Lena's smile faltered. She blinked, confused. "What's that?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. I sat back down, folded my hands in my lap, and looked straight ahead. My face was calm, but inside, I was shaking. Not with fear, but with something new, something like power. Mom picked up the letter, and as she unfolded it, her face went pale. They say birthdays are supposed to be about love, about celebration. But for as long as I can remember, mine felt more like a formality, a box they checked so they could say they did their duty. I'm Emily, just turned 18, the quiet one, if you asked my family, or more accurately, the invisible one. Growing up, I wasn't the star athlete like my brother Jake, or the academic overachiever like Lena. I was just there. I liked writing. I spent my afternoons filling notebooks with stories no one read, thoughts no one asked about. And I was okay with that for a while, until I realized being invisible wasn't peaceful. It was lonely. After my dad died when I was 13, everything changed. Or maybe everyone just dropped their masks. Mom hardened overnight. She was already tough, working long hours as a nurse, holding the house together. But after he was gone, she stopped smiling, stopped noticing me. The only time she spoke to me was to point out what I hadn't done. Dishes, grades, laundry. My entire existence became a checklist she never wanted to check off. Lena, of course, stepped right into the spotlight. She was 17 then, confident, charismatic, the one everyone admired. She soaked up Mom's attention like a sponge and never let me forget it. Her words had an edge to them, always disguised as jokes. You still writing in your diary, Em? Must be nice to live in fantasy land. I'd laugh along sometimes just to keep the peace, but the laughter felt like swallowing glass. Jake was younger, but he followed Lena's lead like a shadow. He'd laugh at her jabs, echo her sarcasm. I don't think he even realized how much it chipped away at me. He was just trying to fit in. Then there was Uncle Roy, Mom's brother who lived with us temporarily after losing his job 3 years ago. He treated everything like a joke, especially me, said I was soft, sensitive, like that was some disease. The only one who ever really saw me was Grandpa George. He moved in after Dad passed, mostly to help with bills. He didn't talk much, but when he did, it mattered. I'd find handwritten quotes left on my desk sometimes. "You're not a background character." Quiet people often make the loudest impact. Little notes that told me someone noticed. But even Grandpa had limits. He was old, tired. He wasn't going to step into the fire just to defend me from my own family. I spent years waiting for something to change, waiting to be seen. I tried harder, brought home decent grades, helped out, even got a part-time job at the bookstore downtown. Still, I was the waste of space, the moody one. Every family photo had me off to the side, half smiling, half hoping someone would pull me in. By the time my birthday came around this year, I had already lowered my expectations to the floor. But deep down, part of me still hoped, just a little. I told myself they'd surprise me, that maybe they were just bad at showing love, that the cake, the box, it might mean something. Instead, I got 5 words on a crumpled note. Try being useful for once. And the thing is, that moment, as cruel as it was, it set something free inside me. A slow-burning anger I'd been holding in for years, disguised as silence, finally found direction, because what they didn't know was that I had already written them a letter, one they were about to read, one that said everything I never had the chance or courage to say out loud. The room was still. Mom's fingers tightened around the letter, but she didn't open it. Not yet. Her jaw was clenched and her eyes flicked from the envelope to my face, like she was waiting for me to explain. I didn't. I just sat there, hands folded neatly in my lap, pretending like my heart wasn't hammering against my ribs. The silence that filled the room wasn't peace, it was pressure. Thick, suffocating. Lena rolled her eyes. What is this? Another one of her poems. Jake chuckled under his breath, like it was safe to laugh again now that his big sister had spoken. Uncle Roy let out a sharp sigh, muttering, "Drama queen," like it was some reflex. And just like that, the spell broke. The room erupted into casual cruelty again, as if they hadn't just dropped a verbal grenade in my lap 5 minutes earlier, as if the note hadn't stung so badly I could still feel it under my skin. But I wasn't listening to them anymore. I was watching Mom. She hadn't looked back at me since I placed the letter on the table. Her fingers ran along the edge of the envelope like she was weighing whether it was even worth opening. She had that tight, pursed lip expression she always wore when I disappointed her, which, apparently, was always. A strange sensation washed over me, part anger, part freedom. For so long, I thought if I just tried hard enough, they'd eventually love me the way I needed. I thought there was something wrong with me, that I wasn't doing enough. But staring at them now, laughing and brushing it off, I felt something shift. Maybe it wasn't me who was broken. Maybe it was them. My eyes locked with Grandpa George's across the room. He wasn't laughing. He hadn't even flinched. He just stared at me with that quiet knowing in his eyes and gave me the smallest nod. The kind of nod that said, "You did the right thing." Still, it didn't make the sting any softer. Because no matter how strong you try to be, being humiliated by your own family in front of a birthday cake with your name on it hurts like hell. The air was stale. The candles were still flickering, long after anyone had cared to sing. I looked at the cake. Plain vanilla. Store-bought. The kind you get when you remember someone's birthday at the last minute. They hadn't even bothered to ask what kind I liked. Not that I expected them to. I took a breath, but it caught in my throat. The humiliation wasn't loud. It wasn't screaming or crying. It was the quiet kind, the kind that sits in your bones and whispers, "You don't belong here." My fingers curled around the edge of the table to keep from trembling. My chest felt tight, like there wasn't enough oxygen in the room. I wanted to scream, or cry, or run. But I didn't, because in that moment I realized something. They didn't get to define me anymore. Not with their laughter, not with their silence, not with their stupid, empty birthday box. I didn't need their validation to matter. I had written that letter for a reason. I didn't know if it would change anything, but I knew it was the truth, and that made it enough. As Mom finally slid her nail under the flap and started to open it, a chill ran down my spine. Not fear, anticipation, because they thought the joke was over, but it hadn't even started yet. The envelope opened with a soft tear, barely a sound, but to me it was thunder. I watched Mom slide the letter out, her fingers suddenly cautious, like she was holding something unfamiliar. Maybe for the first time in her life, she wasn't sure what to expect from me. That alone was enough to make my breath catch. I didn't look away. Not this time. My whole life, I'd been taught to shrink, to stay small when things got loud, to apologize even when I didn't know what I'd done wrong. But something shifted in me the night before, when I wrote that letter. For once, I wasn't going to beg them to understand. I was just going to tell the truth, and if it stung, good. I had stayed up until 2 a.m. writing it. Every sentence was a fight against the voices in my head telling me to stay quiet, to avoid conflict, to keep peace that only existed when I disappeared. But I didn't stop writing. I couldn't. Page after page poured out of me. Memories I'd buried, things I wanted to scream but never dared. I wrote about Dad, how his death cracked everything, how I stopped feeling safe in my own home after he was gone, how Mom changed, not just in grief, but in presence. She stopped looking at me, and when she did, it was only to point out what I hadn't done. I wrote about Lena, how every insult, every jab disguised as just kidding was another stone in my pocket dragging me down, and how she always got away with it because she was loud and shiny and easy to love. I wrote about the way Jake copied her cruelty, how Uncle Roy turned every moment into a punchline, and how I learned to walk quietly so I wouldn't get in anyone's way. But most importantly, I wrote about who I was becoming, without them. About how I'd started therapy 6 months ago, in secret, how I'd applied to a creative writing program 2 towns over, how I was saving money from my part-time job at the bookstore, and how, by the end of the summer, I'd be moving out. No fight, no yelling. Just a decision. I was leaving. Because I refused to spend the rest of my life trying to be useful to people who only saw me as a burden. The letter ended with one sentence I had rewritten over and over until it stopped shaking on the page. You will no longer have the power to define who I am. That was what Mom was reading now. Her eyes scanned the pages slowly. I saw the shift happen, the flicker in her expression. Her brow tensed, her lips pressed together. She looked like she was swallowing something bitter. For once, she didn't know what to say, and that terrified her. Lena stopped laughing. She leaned in slightly, trying to read over Mom's shoulder. "What even is that?" she asked, her voice quieter this time. No one answered. Uncle Roy scratched his chin, clearly uncomfortable. Jake slouched deeper in his chair, glancing at me and then quickly away. I think he was waiting for someone to make a joke, to break the silence, but none came. The silence was mine now, and for the first time in a very long time, I didn't feel small in it. I didn't need to shout. I didn't need to explain. I had said everything I needed to in that letter, and watching them sit with it, watching it knock the wind out of them without me raising my voice, was more powerful than anything I could have screamed. They had taken my birthday and tried to reduce me to nothing, but I'd turned it into a mirror, and now they had to look. Mom's eyes were still moving across the page, but slower now, like each word weighed more than the last. I could see her lips twitch as she tried to keep her face neutral, but it wasn't working. The muscles around her mouth tightened, her throat bobbed. I had imagined this moment so many times. Sometimes I pictured her throwing the letter away. Other times I saw her tearing it in half or laughing it off, but I never imagined what actually happened. She folded the letter in her hands, gently, almost with care. Then she just sat there, staring at it. The silence grew so loud it rang in my ears. Lena was fidgeting. Her bravado had slipped completely now. "Seriously, what does it say?" she asked, but her voice didn't carry the usual smug confidence. It was thinner, unsure. Mom didn't respond. She just looked at me. Not through me, not past me, at me. It was the first time in years I felt like she actually saw me, not as a disappointment, not as someone to correct, but as a person, a daughter. Maybe even someone she didn't fully know. Her voice, when it finally came, was soft, raspy. "You wrote this?" I nodded once, steady. I didn't flinch. She blinked slowly, and I noticed her hand was trembling. "Why didn't you ever say something before?" The question felt absurd. I almost laughed. Why didn't I? I had tried. I had begged for scraps of attention, lowered my voice, shrunk myself, done everything I thought they needed. But I kept my reply simple. "I didn't think you'd listen." That hit her. Hard. Her eyes dropped back to the letter like she was trying to read it again without physically doing it. As if seeing it twice would soften the blow. Lena looked back and forth between us. "So what, you're just gonna throw a guilt trip and act like you're the victim?" I turned to her, calm, clear. "Lena, you called me empty, on my birthday." She froze. It was the first time I'd ever called her out directly. I could see her chest rise a little too fast. Her lips parted like she had something to say, but she didn't. Uncle Roy cleared his throat, breaking the tension. "All right, let's not turn this into a therapy session. She's just being dramatic." "No," Grandpa George interrupted. His voice was soft but firm. "She's not." That silence? It came back harder than before. Everyone looked at Grandpa. He had barely spoken all night. Now his hands were resting on his cane, his back straight despite the years carved into his bones. "She's the only one in this room who's had the courage to say what needed to be said," he said, glancing around. "Maybe instead of mocking her, we should have listened a long time ago." The table was stunned. For a moment, I didn't know what to do. I had prepared for rejection. I had braced for more ridicule, but I hadn't prepared for this crack in the surface, this possibility that maybe, just maybe, someone understood. I looked at Grandpa, and he gave me that same quiet nod. Mom let out a slow breath. "I didn't know you were hurting like this." I didn't say it was obvious. I didn't list the birthdays they forgot, the nights I cried myself to sleep, or the times I was talked over like furniture. I just said, "Now you do." I stood up, not to storm off, not to make a scene, just to leave, calmly, with my dignity intact. I picked up my jacket from the back of the chair and looked at them one last time. "I'm going to be okay, with or without you." Then I walked out the front door, into the cold night air, and for the first time in years, I could finally breathe. The air outside was crisp, almost sharp against my skin. I hadn't realized how warm and stifling it had been in that house until I stepped out. For a second, I just stood there, still clutching the edges of my jacket, heart pounding like it was trying to catch up with everything that had just happened. I didn't cry, I didn't collapse, I just breathed. Deep, slow, unshaking breaths that reminded me I had done it. I had said the truth. And even though it felt terrifying, it also felt like freedom. The next day was quiet. No texts, no calls, not even a passive-aggressive knock at my bedroom door. I think they didn't know what to do with what I gave them. I had handed them my pain, my truth, my choice, and walked away. That power shift, it left them speechless. For a while, I wasn't sure how I felt. Lighter? Yes. Relieved? Definitely. But also sad. Because deep down, even after everything, I wanted them to love me. I wanted my mom to hug me and tell me she was sorry. I wanted Lena to come into my room and finally see me. I wanted Jake to ask if I was okay. I wanted someone, anyone, to say they were proud of me. But wanting something doesn't mean it'll come. And healing doesn't always mean reconciliation. A few days later, Grandpa knocked gently on my door. He didn't say much, just handed me an envelope, smiled, and left. Inside was a note, his handwriting shaky but still strong. "You're not wrong, Emily. I've seen it. And I wish I had spoken up sooner. You are not empty. You are powerful. Keep going." That letter? It meant everything. It didn't fix the years of silence or the ache I still carried, but it reminded me that even if most of them didn't get it, someone did, and sometimes that's enough to keep moving forward. 2 weeks later, I moved out. I found a small room above the bookstore where I work. The rent isn't cheap, but it's mine. The walls are covered in sticky notes with story ideas. My desk is cluttered with pens and empty coffee mugs. There's a little radio that plays old songs I've come to love. It's not perfect, but it feels like me. I got into that writing program, by the way, the one I mentioned in the letter. I start in the fall, and for the first time in my life, I'm building something of my own. Not to impress anyone, not to prove my worth, but because I want to. Because I have stories to tell, because I deserve to be heard. And my birthday? I celebrated it again. A small night with 2 friends from the bookstore. No box, no fake smiles, just laughter, real conversation and cake. Chocolate, my favorite. Looking back, I don't hate my family. I really don't. I think they were hurting too in their own broken ways. But hurt isn't an excuse for cruelty, and silence isn't strength. So if you're watching this and you've ever felt like the black sheep, the invisible one, the disappointment, just know this. You are not an empty box. You are a story in progress, and you get to decide how it ends. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't scream or fight or argue. Sometimes it's standing up, speaking your truth, and walking out the door with your head held high. Because healing doesn't always look like fixing what's broken. Sometimes it looks like building something new. So, if this story resonated with you, even a little, if you've ever felt overlooked, unheard, or like you were never enough for the people who should have loved you most, I want you to know you are not alone, and your story matters. Drop a comment below and tell me what part hit home the most, or just leave a, if words feel too heavy right now. I read every single one. Share this video with someone who might need it. Maybe a friend who feels unseen, or a sibling who needs to understand. Like the video if it made you feel something. It helps more than you know. And if you want more real, raw stories like this one, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's coming next. Thanks for sitting with me through this. Until next time, be loud, even in your quiet. Be honest, even if your voice shakes. And never stop telling your story. Fade out with soft music and channel logo or social handle.